Still stand there because Arturo and Alberto are not here yet. But we're going to try to stick to a schedule, and I'll tell you what that is. They're going to finish up in a couple of minutes, a few more slides they had yesterday, and then this morning we're going to talk about biological therapies for the pancreas, and also tonsillitis, sinusitis, appendicitis, prostatitis, and we want to demonstrate that also. And we're also going to show the video, the head video. And this afternoon we're going to get in and demonstrate that also. So this afternoon session will start at 2 o'clock this morning. Well, hopefully we're starting it right away as soon as they walk in the door. And then we'll break about 10:15.
Why not show a film since it's kind of like...
Xylaneural? No, that's Impetol.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, our sensitive P has caffeine in it too. It's in the breakdown is in the Peter Dosh book if you want to look and see what's in this. It's on the label too. Okay.
Die bei dieser Methode angewandte Injektionstechnik will ich im Folgenden aufzeigen. Als Dornenkranz bezeichne ich aus Gründen der Einprägsamkeit eine Injektionsserie am Schädel.
Okay. This series of films shows the injection techniques used in this therapy. I call this series of injections to the skull the crown of thorns. And we want to demonstrate, of course, that one today. Anybody want to volunteer for that? Come on, Gary. Okay, Jim Colquitt and Jim Thompson. All right, we'll
Signalus werden dabei jeweils 0,2 Milliliter des Neuraltherapeutikums im Bereich der größten Zirkumferenz in 2 cm Abständen unter die Kopfschwarte injiziert.
Use a 0.4 millimeter diameter 27 gauge needle to inject 0.2 of a milliliter xylaneural under the scalp around the greater circumference of the skull at 20 milliliter intervals. About an inch apart, you go all the way around the skull from where the prominence is around circular. This should be combined with an intravenous injection of 1 milliliter. Okay.
Milliliter intravenös.
Eindrucksvoll ist neben der Wirksamkeit die Indikationsbreite. Erstens Migräne und vaskulärer Kopfschmerz. Zweitens Kommotio und postkommotionelle Beschwerden. Der Erfolg ist frappierend. Allerdings ist es oft nötig, an der Traumastelle und der Gegend des Contour-Cou zusätzlich noch einige Injektionen zu machen und etwaige Traumennarben zu infiltrieren. Drittens Apoplexie und postapoplektische Zustände. Viertens bei meningealen Reizzuständen, beispielsweise nach Impfungen. Fünftens bei zentralen Durchblutungsstörungen und im Senium. Sechstens nach einem Kopftrauma kann des Öfteren der Schädel selbst zum Störfeld werden und damit zum Ausgangspunkt für andere Leiden.
The indications are for migraine and vascular headaches, concussion and post-concussion syndromes. Maybe we ought to get started with Arturo. Is Alberto coming? Okay. I'll finish reading this and then you should be here. Carol, why don't you go see if you can find Alberto, please? I'm going to have John translate from the German. I mean, anyone can read it, so.
If you don't have these symptoms, does it give them to you?
Probably, yeah.
I didn't know I was volunteering anymore. It's too late now, Jim.
Then we have to inject other places. We have to locate what the focus is, or the related blockage. Okay. The effect is often dramatic, but injections to the site of an old injury, scars, and contractile locations may also be necessary. CVA and post-epileptic conditions for meningeal irritation, For example, immunization. Number 5, central circulatory disturbances in the geriatric patients. Number 6, following a head injury, the skull itself may become an interference field and can be the starting point for other illnesses. Such an interference field can be eliminated by this method. Well, I think Lowell said, was it that 80 to 85% of the disturbances in the head are in the teeth and jaws. So it's a big number, but you can have other problems, tumors and things too. Alberto, are you ready to come up here and get started? Yes, go ahead. Melissa?
Anyone here has had experience treating someone that's had a stroke with this, can you tell us what your experience was?
I imagine that Arturo and Alberto has done that. And Bill, you've done that, haven't you? Yeah. So we'll get into that. As a volunteer? Okay. I'll work on that. I'll do the sphenopalatine injection on that one. I can see it better. Now, next patient. Well, come on up here. We're just filling in until...
Francis Brown. Are you going to put on Colombia, Cameroon? 0-0. 0-0. I just saw it. 0-0 the first half. Yeah.
Bueno, esperamos que la noche no haya sido tan grave después de esa agresión informática del día de ayer.
We hope you've had a good night in spite of the formative aggression we submitted you to yesterday. We hope no triumphs were running after you during the night. And we can continue with the information now.
Con la finalidad de terminar lo de ayer para que no nos quede incompleto, vamos a ver un poco más rápido el tema ya en cuanto a las funciones del sistema básico de Pischinger.
Just to round up and wrap up the information on the Pischinger basic system, we're just going to show you a couple of slides, and then we can go to see it in practice.
Entonces quedó plenamente demostrado que las funciones normales del sistema básico de Pischinger son regular el presupuesto del oxígeno en las células, regular la función y los niveles del agua, regular los electrolitos, el equilibrio ácido-base y la defensa inespecífica.
If we just make a resume of what the basic functions or the normal functions of the basic system are, we have the first to regulate the oxygen budget of the body, the function of the water, the regulation of electrolytes, the equilibrium, the acid-base, alkaline and acid equilibrium, and the in-specific defense system, that is the one on the left side of our table of homeostasis.
Efectivamente, Kellner, de la Universidad de Viena, demostró que el equilibrio ácido-base era regulado por los reticulocitos del sistema básico. Si había disminución o decrecimiento en el nivel de reticulocitos, el medio se volvía ácido, y si había un crecimiento celular de reticulocitos, el medio se volvía alcalino.
Kellner demonstrated that the equilibrium, the acid-base equilibrium, was maintained by the reticulocytes, and if there was a cellular destruction, we had an acid condition, and if there was a cellular growth, adding, we had an alkaline environment.
Con respecto a la utilización del oxígeno, pudo ser demostrado independientemente a lo largo del tiempo, primero por Pischinger y Kellner, después por Kellner y Perger y finalmente por Schütt, que eran los trienos, o sea, estos ácidos grasos insaturados, los que regulaban la utilización del oxígeno. Entonces, en el momento en que el sistema básico de Fischinger se empantana, se llena de porquería y no se pueden producir los trienos, entonces no hay el mediador que hace que el oxígeno que aporta el sistema sanguíneo sea utilizado por la célula.
Independently, first Fischinger, then Kellner, and Perger, and finally Schuh demonstrated that it was those trions, those insaturated acid, fatty acids, the ones that were responsible with an intermediary function or responsibility to have the cell utilize the oxygen. What does this mean? That if we have a muddy condition at the level of the swimming pool, the oxygen that is brought in by the venous system cannot be utilized if those trions are not active. So those trions are responsible to contribute to the oxygen utilization on behalf of the cell.
Y viene entonces ya la manera como se responde a nivel del sistema de defensa en el sistema básico. Cuando la célula es agredida, se produce inicialmente la fase de shock. A esta fase de shock viene una respuesta que es la fase de contrashock, y después de la fase de contrashock vendría la fase de acomodación. Esta es la forma normal de responder el sistema básico a la agresión, llámese virus, bacteria, noxa química, etc.
This is the normal way how the basic system responds to any type of aggression. The cell is attacked by toxicity, by heat, but whatever, and it produces a shock phase. That shock phase is followed by a counter-shock phase, and this counter-shock phase is followed then by what we call the phase of accommodation. It gets back to its normal rhythm in order to be alert to wait for the next attack.
Hay que tener en cuenta que depende de la cantidad y de la agresión para que se dé la respuesta. Por ejemplo, ataques bacterianos de 20.000, 50.000, 100.000 bacterias son totalmente manejadas a nivel local. Se necesita que haya una agresión bacteriana por encima de 500.000 de bacterias para que ya se haga una reacción generalizada. Con respecto a la duración de la reacción, sobrecargas medianas, es decir, por debajo de 500.000 bacterias, por ejemplo, hacen reacciones locales que son solucionadas por el sistema básico de Fischinger a nivel local en 4 horas.
The duration of those reaction phases, the shock phase, the counter shock, and the phase of accommodation, depends also on the intensity, on the number of the troops, of the invading troops. If you're dealing with 20, 50, 100,000 bacteria, this is handled locally by the lower troops. There is no need to go very deeply into shock phases, counter shock phases, because the amount or the number of the invading troops is too small. It needs more than 500,000 bacteria, at least, to produce a fully formed shock phase, counter shock phase, to really activate the system the way we saw it on the last slide. Normally, smaller attacks or medium-sized attacks produce or unchain this phase of shock and counter shock, and it is regulated locally in more or less 4 hours at a local basis.
Ahora, por lo contrario, si ya se están produciendo infecciones banales febriles, o sea, más de 500.000 bacterias, no estamos en procesos de sepsis. Reacciones de más de 500.000 bacterias que involucran todo el sistema, entonces se produce una fase de shock con un pródromo de 24 a 48 horas, donde la persona empieza a sentirse mal, como descompuesta, etc. Viene la fase de contrashock, o sea, el cuadro clínico propiamente dicho, 4 a 5 días de duración, y viene luego la fase de acomodación o reconvalecencia, también con una duración de 4 a 5 días.
if the infections are with fever, even though there might be light infections, but we already have feverish attacks, then we have a shock phase with a prodrome of 24 to 48 hours. Then the counter shock phase, that is the clinical picture that you really see, lasts between 4 and 5 days. Let it go biologically. And the phase of accommodation, that is the return of the cell level to its normal resting position to be able to be attacked again and to be able to start its shock and counter shock again, which reconvalescence, which might last between 4 and 5 days too.
Esto es muy importante entenderlo, porque si vemos una enfermedad, un proceso normal de una enfermedad, respetando el mecanismo de función del sistema básico, debe tener más o menos unos 10 días de duración. De ahí que cuando nosotros a punta de antibióticos y antiinflamatorios queremos reducir esta fase normal a 2 o 3 días, lo único que vamos a lograr es una alteración en la estructura básica del sistema.
And if you look at this number of days, you know that the body doctor takes about 10 days to cure itself, to get rid itself of any kind of aggression, if it can manage the situation itself. That's why when we go ahead with antibiotic or whatever, and in 3 days we, quote unquote, free ourselves of some disease, you know the kind of stabbing that we're doing to the basic system.
Veamos ahora cómo trabajan las funciones inespecíficas de la defensa.
Let's just have a look and see how those in-specific or non-specific defense functions, how they act, how they work.
Cuando empieza un ataque, es decir, el sistema básico es atacado por unas noxas, entonces la fase de shock lo que busca es delimitar la infección.
Whenever we are attacked, we are invaded by any kind of noxa, for example, like this one here, the shock phase, what does it do? It surrounds the infection process.
Y ocurre aquí algo que para mí es fantástico. Los reticulocitos, estas células embrionales totipotenciales, se transforman en histiocitos y empiezan a rodear el foco bacteriano o el foco de noxas, formando lo que se llama el muro histiocitario. Lo rodean completamente.
And here we have one of the many miracles, fascinating miracles that we find within this treasure called the human being. Those totipotential cells, the reticulocytes, they mutate, they disguise themselves or mutate into histiocytes and form a wall around the invader, wall that is known as a histiocytary wall. It surrounds them, the invading agent.
Y miremos qué ocurre dentro de esta situación. Primero, se produce una fase de edema que empieza entonces a licuar, por decir así, a aumentar el contenido de líquido dentro de este muro histiocitario. Entonces nosotros vamos a entender de que una toxina licuada, diluida, va a tener menos efecto que una toxina concentrada.
What starts happening within that wall built by those histocytes? Liquidification processes, edema processes start. And then we have to understand that any kind of noxa or of toxin which is liquefied is less active than a solid one with all its proper structures.
En este momento empiezan a ser segregadas una cantidad de enzimas proteolíticas, de enzimas destructoras como peroxidasas y proteolíticas para empezar a comer y a desbaratar todas estas noxas.
And a whole lot of enzymes, proteolytic enzymes, are being segregated here, with like peroxidase, and they start eating off and getting hold of these leftovers or dissolved noxa.
Al mismo tiempo, estos histiocitos, este muro histiocitario, empieza a segregar los trieros, los ácidos grasos triconjugados, para que envíen la información al resto del cuerpo de que aquí se está librando una batalla y que necesitamos que vengan los granulocitos por vía sanguínea a través del proceso de quemotaxis.
And this is a hell of an information service, because these histiocytes start segregating the trions. This trions at this three conjugated fatty acids, they have the specific responsibility at this level of reaction to go to the body and say, please send the troops, the granulocytes, with the chemotaxis activity to help us get rid of this whole invading and dissolving condition. So they have a specific tool, a specific homework to do.
Aquí viene otra cosa interesantísima descubierta por Pischinger, comprobada por Carrel y por Evelyn. Se pensaba toda la vida, o sea, es el concepto y aún todavía mucha gente lo tiene, de que los macrófagos vendrían provenientes del sistema sanguíneo. Es cierto, ellos vienen del sistema sanguíneo en la segunda tanda. La primera tanda son los fibroblastos, estas células totipotenciales, las que se transforman en monocitos, es decir, para iniciar la fase de macrófago. Cuando este proceso termina, estos monocitos vuelven otra vez a su forma de fibroblastos. O sea que la fase de macrófagos inicial no son macrófagos de la sangre, son fibroblastos transformados en macrófagos.
This is another interesting process that was found by Pischinger, and then it was corroborated by Carrel and Evelyn. It was always believed that the macrophages came in via the blood and starting this dinner of this trash or of this bacteria or whatever. And it is not that way. They come in but later. The initial phase, it starts by the fibroblasts. You know, those cells that have the ability to mutate into monocytes. They start the dining process here, the phagocyting process. And only then, via the blood, and that is correct, you have the macrophages coming in and take care of the rest of the dinner. And at that very moment, those monocytes disguise themselves back into fibroblasts.
He's saying that the reticulocytes and histiocytes are different than these two.
Yeah.
They're not the same.
No, no.
Not synonymous.
Y con esta fase de macrófagos termina la fase de defensa inespecífica. Es decir, aquí el sistema básico terminó su trabajo porque ya debe estar llegando el refuerzo, todo el resto del batallón proveniente de la sangre.
And with this here, the in-specific defense phase is over. They have complied with the duty they were programmed to as basic systems, because by now all the troops, the rest of the battalions, the defense units, must be coming in via the blood.
Entonces, esa era la fase de shock, la inespecífica.
That was the non-specific or in-specific shock phase. Now
Ahora,
we're going to the counter-shock phase.
ahora viene la fase de contra-shock que se caracteriza por ser una defensa inmunoespecífica.
The counter-shock phase is characterized by being a immunospecific defense phase, not non-specific. This one is very specific.
Caracterizada por una reacción linfocitaria y una producción de anticuerpos humorales específicos contra la noxa que está atacando.
Here, specificity is the name of the game. This is characterized by a lymphocytary reaction and by the production of specific humoral antibodies. That is the opposite of the invading enemy. The negative picture of them, specific, is built up during this counter phase, counter shock phase.
en la demostración de que esta es una defensa inmunoespecífica es que a los pocos días, es decir, acordémonos de que ese cuadro debe durar 4 o 5 días, empiezan a aumentar las gamma globulinas.
The demonstration that this is a counter-shock phase, that this is a that this is a specific immune activity, is given by the fact that in a couple of days you have a very marked increase of gamma globulins. And remember that that process lasts between 4 and 5 days if we let it run in a normal way.
Finalmente viene la fase de acomodación. Realmente parece todavía, es decir, Fischinger ha encontrado que a nivel del sistema linfático hay un informador que es el que le dice al cuerpo que esta fase de contrashock terminó y que debe empezar la acomodación. Esto está apenas en proceso de determinación. Y esta fase de acomodación deja al organismo energética y humoralmente reforzado. Es decir, si nosotros dejamos que transcurra el shock y el contrashock normal, el cuerpo queda mejor. Es decir, hemos dejado que el cuerpo salga a bailar con la fiebre y con la infección, quedando entonces con elevación de la capacidad de reacción, o sea, al próximo ataque ya el cuerpo reacciona más rápido y hay un alto contenido de anticuerpos que le permite entonces defenderse la próxima vez mejor.
In his last days, Fischinger found a substance which was never baptized. There is not much studying on that beyond his death. A substance that was used as an advisor to the lymphatic system that the phase of accommodation had started. There is not much being studied after Fischinger's death on that. But what does happen when we finish the phase of accommodation? First of all, the body, if we have allowed the body to go out and dance with the different bacteria and socialize with them and have the phases transfer in a normal way, the end result is that we have a strengthening of the energetic and humoral parts of the body. We have an elevation, an increase of the ability to react. That is, for the next time when the phase of accommodation is gone smoothly, the next time we will be much more alert to be there because we have just had some training. And we have a high content of antibodies. We have a lot of pictures like the police of possible thieves, and we will have a better recognition system when they come in and say, you can come in, you cannot come in. We have a bigger or better ability to, yes, recognize invaders.
Y aquí ocurre otra de las cosas maravillosas del sistema básico. Es lo que él llama las copulaciones inmunológicas. Resulta que las células plasmáticas que habían migrado al sitio del ataque y que se metieron al sistema básico a ayudar y a pelear, estas células plasmáticas se transforman, se mutan y se quedan metidas en el sistema básico como células dendríticas que estructuralmente son distintas a las células plasmáticas. Pero en el próximo ataque, estas células dendríticas volverán rápidamente a ser células plasmáticas, convirtiéndose así en una gran reserva de inmunoglobulinas y de anticuerpos.
Here's another one of the miracles of the transmutations that you find in the body. They call it immunologic copulations. Those plasmatic cells that have come to the battle place to help and to cooperate, once the whole battle is over, they mutate, they change into, how would you term dendritic cells? Dendrites. Then into dendrites. But they don't stay as dendrites. If there is another need for them, not as dendrites, because they're different than the plasmatic cells, they return their structure to plasmatic cells, increasing thus the reserve units, immunoglobulins and
Anticuerpos.
and of antibodies.
De esta manera, en la próxima arranque de la defensa inespecífica, automáticamente la célula dendrítica entra a volverse célula plasmática y no hay que esperar a que lleguen de la sangre, sino que son como policías camuflados que quedaron allí de las células plasmáticas.
Just imagine this in practical life, you know. For the next attack, we don't have to wait till the defense units come in via the blood. We have these guys undercover, dendrites that immediately when they're needed turn into plasmatic cells and are there much before the defense brigades coming via the blood. So you have a fortified, a strengthened defense system.
Entonces vemos pues cómo respondió a una sobrecarga el sistema con su fase inespecífica de shock, su fase específica de contrashock y luego su fase de acomodación. Esta fase de acomodación es fluctuante y en la medida en que el organismo tenga mejor sanidad, un sistema más rápido, esta fase será menos larga, la reconvalecencia será más corta.
This is just graphically to show you how the basic system responds to an aggression. As we saw before, the non or the inspecific shock phase, followed by the specific counter shock phase, which is then followed by the phase of accommodation. Phase of accommodation that will be less peaky and less valley, more flat along the line, the better health condition and the better immune ability the body has.
Ahora, ¿qué se encontró? Que a esta función normal, con la iatrogenia que podíamos producir, o con los bloqueos ya digamos por toxicidad ambiental, etcétera, empezaban a presentarse alteraciones. Podía haber una fase retenida de shock, que son las infecciones subagudas exudativas.
What has been found while analyzing these three types of phases, the shock phase, the counter shock, and the phase of accommodation, that because of all the retoxicity, the frustration of the body's polyrites, the excretion, the reaction, etc., you had a retarded shock phase translating itself in subacute exudative inflammatory processes. You never let it come out. You never let it flow.
O podía ocurrir otro caso, y era que se produjera una fase retenida en contrashock, que corresponde, más avanzado el proceso de bloqueo, corresponde a una infección crónica proliferativa, las puertas del proceso.
And let's say we frustrated this shock phase. We inhibited it with a retoxic measure, with antis. Then we had, as we say, a subacute exudative phase, a retarded or detained shock phase. If we keep on frustrating and inhibiting, we will find a retained or detained counter phase or counter shock phase, which translates or exteriorizes itself as a proliferative inflammatory chronic inflammation. What does this mean here in common language? It is the prior stage to a tumor formation.
Podía darse también el caso, por ejemplo, si el organismo es invadido por una toxina supremamente agresiva, aún en condiciones normales, que se produjese un shock anafiláctico.
If the body is invaded by a whole lot of unknown toxins, it doesn't mean unknown that the body will never be able to recognize them. The defense, the guardians who were not trained, were unable to recognize, to just auto-recognize the invaders. You can have an anaphylactic shock.
También, finalmente, se vio de que de estas fases retenidas de shock y de contrashock, consecutivamente a lo largo de la vida, el organismo empezaba a entrar en un proceso de ataxia, o sea, que le daba lo mismo, entonces ni reaccionaba ni no reaccionaba, siendo eso la respuesta final a la parálisis total de la regulación. Recordemos que enfermedades degenerativas, como por ejemplo esclerosis lateral amiotrófica, esclerosis múltiple o el mismo cáncer, siempre están en fenómenos de ataxia o parálisis total de reacción.
This anaphylactic shock is a further step down if we have inhibited these phases of shock and of countershock. If we continue retoxifying the body in that sense, the body will come up with an ataxia, with an ataxic condition. What is an ataxic condition? I couldn't care less, you know. Let come in whoever wants to this party, you know, enemies, friends, whoever wants. I don't care. And finally, you have, if we keep on behaving in a retoxic way, where we end up with what Hopfer calls the total paralysis of regulation. That is, roadblocks all over, you know. The ever-flowing system of the body is static.
La sobrecarga se pudo observar que producían reacciones distintas a cada lado según la intensidad de la sobrecarga. Entonces, una sobrecarga ubicada en un lado del cuerpo hacía que todo ese de mi cuerpo respondiera diferentemente. Por ejemplo, cuando usamos el dermatron y nosotros medimos mano, mano, pie, pie, etc., nosotros podemos ubicar en qué cuadrante del cuerpo está la sobrecarga porque la respuesta de presión de la aguja o bloqueo de la aguja será igual. Pero también un hemograma nos va a dar diferente. De allí que, por ejemplo, en la clínica nosotros en este momento, después de hacer las mediciones, estamos tomando en capilar de los dedos de los pies y de los dedos de las manos 4 hemogramas para mostrar cómo sí hay diferentes valores de hemograma en los 4 cuadrantes de acuerdo a de donde esté el campo interferente.
Another interesting thing that was found out, that was corroborated by Fischer, was that the invasion, the attack, produced lateral consequences, and we found out, or we corroborated that taking capillary samples in the toes and in the fingers laterally, and we could have 4 different readings. The same is corroborated also with the Dermatron. If you do the hand, right foot, left, right foot, left hand, if you have those 4 quadrants, you might have 4 different energetic readings. In a hemogram, we have corroborated that, taking blood at the bottom and at the top of the extremities and having 4 different readings.
Es interesante ver que en aquel cuadrante o en mi cuerpo del cuerpo en el que esté el campo interferente hay un aumento del cuadro de leucocitario.
And it is very interesting to see that in that quadrant where you have the field of disturbance, the sniper, you have an increase of the leukocyte count in that very quadrant. And if you test it with the Dermatron, if it is an itis condition, you will find that in that quadrant you have a higher reading. If it is a degenerative condition, an osis condition, you have a lower reading, way below 82.
How much different with the white counting?
Y el recuento es en las blancas, ¿cómo será?
No, es decir, hay una cosa interesante. No estamos en una sepsis, ¿no? O sea, no hay, los glóbulos blancos están en número normal, pero en aquel lado o en aquel cuadrante donde está el cuadro hay formas inmaduras, callados o otras que en el resto de los valores no están.
We don't have a septic condition here. The white count is still at its normal ranges. But what I want to point out is that in that very quadrant or hemilateral hemisphere where you have a field of disturbance, sending disturbing information, you already have a different count long before the white count changes because the septic condition is beginning yet.
Pero en este lado encontramos formas inmaduras que en el lado normal no están, como los callados. en un mayor
¿Cómo se
número.
llamarán los callados?
Callados,
You will find on this side also
inmaduras.
immature forms like the callados, huh? Bands. Immature forms, which you don't find on the other side.
Y también hay un mayor aumento de eosinófilos, demostrando la reacción alérgica al foco.
Eosinophilus count also is higher, just as an expression of the reaction against the pollen.
What level
Of eosinophilus,
of difference between?
¿qué diferencia habrá en cuanto al recuento de eosinófilos?
Por ejemplo, si en el lado normal estamos en 0,
Let's say if on the normal side we would be at 0 level,
en el otro lado podemos estar entre el 8 al 12%.
you might find between 8 to 12% increase on the affected side.
Ok, ahí, no,
¿Para atrás?
es. Algo bien interesante es cómo se va produciendo una reducción del umbral de respuesta del organismo. Por ejemplo, habíamos dicho que en un organismo sano necesitamos 500.000 bacterias para producir una infección. A medida que el proceso de toxicidad del medio se va aumentando, cada vez necesitamos menos. Es, por ejemplo, como hay una reducción de 1/3 a 1/20, de 2/3 a 1/50 o 1/100, y en enfermedades como la esclerosis múltiple estamos reducidos a 1/500. O sea que en la esclerosis múltiple o en estas enfermedades degenerativas, con 50.000, 70.000 bacterias podemos desencadenar un cuadro infeccioso
We
severo.
were saying before that we needed a certain concentration, a certain number of invading groups to unchain a full response of the body, a full shock phase, a full counter shock, and a full accommodation phase. We were saying that we need more than 500,000 bacteria in order to unchain the full reaction phase. Well, the sicker we get, the less troops, invading troops we get to unchain that reaction. And that's how you see how it goes down. When you have degenerative diseases like a multiple sclerosis, with 1/500,000th of the number, the body's already there trying to do something. It is just a picture of how it gets weakened more and more, how the boxer brings his gloves down and is knocked out very easily. Anything just can knock it down, the body.
It takes less as you go along to turn on the specific response. Initially, it would take 500,000, let's say, and then as we suppress with our antis, it takes less to trigger that specific response.
Para estimular o para desencadenar la respuesta específica o la respuesta inespecífica. Se requieren menos invasores.
Exacto. La respuesta específica, ¿por qué? Habíamos dicho de que por debajo de 500.000 el problema lo solucionábamos local,
A nivel inespecífico.
no más, sin tener que llamar el resto no sea, sin crear estado de sitio. En estas condiciones, por eso, por ejemplo, un paciente de SIDA o un paciente con una enfermedad degenerativa se muere de una gripa.
If we're talking about the specific radiation, because we had said before that, superficial conditions are handled locally, specifically on the left side without too much hassle. You don't have to call the SWAT and all the special brigade. That's why an AIDS patient dies of a cold, of a common flu. We're talking about these specific defense units. They, with little number of invasions, it's already triggered because of the total weakness.
Entonces vemos cómo la función anormal del sistema básico de Fischinger, el tener el sistema básico de Fischinger, hace que el lugar anatómico prelesionado, que puede ser heredado o adquirido, se convierta en un suceso patológico. O sea, el tener campos de interferencia en el sistema básico de Pischinger o tener el sistema básico de Pischinger funcionando normal hace que aquellos órganos prelesionados enfermen de inmediato.
And this is how you see that the abnormal function of the basic system will produce something that, please, has to be remembered. All those locus resistencia minoris, the places of minor resistance that we might have inherited or acquired, turn, because of the abnormal function of the basic system, they turn into pathologic happenings.
Y no necesitamos obligatoriamente que esta función anormal sea en el tejido básico del órgano. Puede ser a distancia porque acordémonos que esto es una sola unidad.
And one of the things that we have to keep in mind, the abnormal function of the basic system must not necessarily be abnormal in the neighborhood of the organ. Because as we heard yesterday, whatever happens at the environment of the little toe via the communication system, the capillaries and the lymph, is like a gossip that travels very fast around the whole organism.
Entonces, ¿en qué empieza a manifestarse estas funciones anormales del sistema básico de Pischinger? Uno, en que infecciones diversas, cualquier cosa ya nos complicamos, cualquier gripita se nos vuelve bronconeumonía, o empiezan a aparecernos alergias que antes no teníamos.
Por eso es que los sucesos alérgicos están del otro lado del corte biológico. How does this translate into the day-to-day life? Abnormal function starts manifesting itself in all types of infections. The little cut here turns into a severe infection. And we start having all kinds of allergic processes. That's why allergy is dealt very irresponsible, as if it was a happening on the left side of the biological cut. And it is not like that. Allergic happenings are the end result of a mess up here, and you are already on the other side of the biological cut. And then everything turns into an allergy. A little flu turns into a bronchopneumonia because we don't have the active brigades to fight and to stand against the invading enemy.
Entonces, los del grupo de la Universidad de Viena empezaron a encontrar cómo se producían cosas interesantes. Cuando había una parálisis intensa de la defensa inespecífica, o sea, una disregulación del sistema básico de Pischinger, aparecían cosas que normalmente en el sistema de defensa no había, como era la formación de macroglobulinas. Y esto especialmente se producía en enfermedades reumáticas o en enfermedades malignas, es decir, quinto y sexto niveles de la fase de reacción.
The same Vienna team started finding out that when you were facing an intense paralysis of the non-specific defense ability, that is, of the holy rights, of the self-determination rights of the body, you found what they baptized as a dysregulation of the basic system. This dysregulation brought with it the formation of macroglobulins. And those macroglobulins were specifically there in case of rheumatic diseases and of malign diseases.
Ahora, el que cómo reaccione el sistema básico generando patología depende de la constitución, o lo que los que entienden algo de homeopatía conocen, se habla del terreno. Esta constitución del paciente, que es generalmente genéticamente inducida, por eso encontramos familias que sufren de hipertensión, familias que sufren de cáncer, etc., da el modo de reacción. Entonces, unos pueden tener una reacción predominantemente vascular y les dará, por ejemplo, enfermedad hipertensiva. Otros tendrán reacción predominantemente del tejido conectivo, entonces tendrán enfermedades reumáticas.
So the way a body reacts under a mess up of the basic system depends on the terrain, as the French call it, or on the constitution. And that is given from a genetic point of view. That's why we have whole groups of families that have high blood pressure problems. Whole families that die of cancer. It's the predisposition. Some constitutions have a specific way to react from a vascular point of view. So those families have hypertensive diseases. Other models, other families might react to a mess up of the basic principle, might have reactions at the level of the connective tissue. And then they will have rheumatic diseases and not vascular or hypertensive diseases.
Y entonces encontramos aquí las dos reinas terapéuticas para solucionar estas funciones anormales del sistema básico de Fischinger. La terapia neural, que nos va a desbloquear los campos de interferencia, y la reactivación mesenquímica según Paul, que nos va a desempantanar este sistema de toda la porquería.
And after all this mess here, we find here the two queens to help us clean or get rid of the mess of the basic system. On one side, you have the neurotherapy according to Huneke, which is the one that will help us disconnect the fields of disturbance. And we have already heard what a field of disturbance can do. And the second queen here is the electroacupuncture according to Gall, which will help us with specific agents, undercover agents and whatever, help us clean that swimming pool, that mesenchymal system, that connective tissue, that extracellular tissue.
Ahora entonces sí entremos a ver la interferencia de los sistemas conductores y transformadores de impulso para entender qué es ese campo de interferencia ya anatómicamente.
So now that you have seen what might block a given system, a given flowing system, let's look at the interferences of the conductive and transformation system. In other words, let's see how one of those field of disturbances act and how we disconnect.
Entonces veamos cuáles son las causas de las alteraciones de la regulación.
Which are the reasons for alterations in the regulation process?
Entonces, al sistema básico de Fischinger no le importa qué es, o sea, una infección, una intoxicación, un trauma, una quemadura, un implante, etcétera, todos lo hacen responder igual.
The basic system doesn't care what kind of aggression you're talking about. It always responds in the same manner. It doesn't care if it is an infection, if it is an intoxication, if it is a trauma, if it is a burning, or if it is an implant, a dental implant. It always responds the same way to whatever type of aggression, as a first response.
Ahora, lo que hace diferente la reacción es la intensidad del estímulo, la duración del estímulo y la situación de inicio. O sea, si nosotros a un paciente que ha comido mal, que tiene intoxicaciones alimentarias, que ha sufrido una cantidad de enfermedades, que tiene un estado de salud deplorable, le metemos un implante dental, acabamos con su salud.
What makes a difference is not the type of stimulus. We saw it, implants, burning, trauma, fracture, whatever. Doesn't care what kind of stimulus. What really counts is the intensity of the stimulus, the duration of the stimulus, and the situation where it is caught at from the point of view of millivolts. If it is caught at its minus 70 millivolt level, it's there, it's fit, it can shock, counter shock, and accommodate. But if it is caught at plus 20, then you're in big trouble. Because if you have a patient who eats junk food, you know, has gone through several nutritional intoxications, inactivity, several gonorrheas, and whatever. And then he goes to his dentist and say, here, come and you just give me $5,000 and let's do these implants here. That guy is going to be in the hole in 2 weeks because the starting situation, the defense starting situation of his brigades is nil, isn't even there. And he gets such a stress and additional trauma on top of it. So it's the intensity of the stimulus, the duration of it, and the starting position of the defense ability that counts. Not the type of stimulus.
Acordémonos cómo el organismo a una sobrecarga aislada simplemente responde con una alarma local. A una sobrecarga límite responde con una reacción total de 4 horas y a una sobrecarga extrema responde con shock.
We can divide these types of reactions in the following way. When you have an isolated aggression, stress, then the body just responds with an alarm. And that's handled, by the 5th degree troops, and no big deal. When you have a limited aggression, then the body, in a local manner, takes care of the problem, which might last 3 to 4 hours. And we have, when the body receives extreme aggression, then it reacts with the full brigade. Shock, counter-shock, and phase of accommodation.
Ahora, las sobrecargas crónicas es el peor problema. ¿Por qué? Si tenemos una sobrecarga continuamente agrediendo, entonces, ¿qué hace? Que no le permite al cuerpo que tenga una recuperación y por consiguiente no le permite que tenga una acomodación de respuesta. Entonces, se presenta como consecuencia de una sobrecarga crónica y allí el problema de tener un tratamiento de conductos, de tener un implante, de tener una amigdalitis crónica o de tener un apéndice crónicamente irritada o una vesícula funcionando mal, se produce retardo y limitación en las reacciones inespecíficas de defensa y retardo en la respuesta inmunológica.
The worst thing that can happen is chronic aggressions, because they are chronically sucking off energy of the body. They are permanently there. And what's the worst damage? That they don't give the body the ability to recoup. They don't give the body the ability to go through the phase of accommodation, which is the resettling phase where it sort of gets its gloves together again, and is ready for the next fight. No ability to recuperate. The phase of accommodation is gone, so it doesn't go back into its defense position. It produces a retardation and limitation on the non-specific defense abilities. That is, the use or the exercise of the body's rights to excrete, to react, etc., as we saw yesterday on the left side, are retarded, are detained. And then we cannot take care, if these are detained, we cannot take care of minor problems, because the brigades in charge of minor problems, limited aggressions, they're retarded. And it produces as an overall a retarded immunologic response ability. That's why a root canal treatment, an implant, or any permanent energy-sucking factor does all this kind of damages as an overall.
So both the specific and the
They are impaired, both of them.
Y recordemos cómo todas las enfermedades degenerativas se caracterizan por una respuesta inmunológica incorrecta.
And let's just remind ourselves how all degenerative diseases are characterized by wrong immune responses. And then you label it, whatever you want to label it, cancer, AIDS, or whatever.
Ahora, ¿cuáles son los efectos de las sobrecargas crónicas? Menor resistencia a las infecciones y procesos alérgicos. Es el inicio de la puerta.
And this is just repeating what we have been saying all the morning, you know. What are the effects of chronic aggressions? Less resistant to infections, you know. The normal flu that everybody has beginning of November, December, for that person turns into bronchopneumonia and all kinds of allergies. And you're allergic against your own soul.
Ahora, entre las sobrecargas crónicas se convierte el foco bacteriano en una cuestión clave. Es inaudito, porque es que o sea, mi consultorio está atestado de pacientes crónicos, o sea, ya solo llega el que ya pasó por todas las clínicas, por todos los médicos y nadie le ha solucionado. Y abre uno la boca y encuentra restos radiculares, aprieta uno la encía y salen los chorros de pus, es decir, focos bacterianos que están produciendo muchísimas veces infecciones crónicas mudas, porque a lo mejor ese resto radicular que uno lo mueve y aprieta y sale pus, uno hace el hemograma y ya no hay respuesta. Entonces, ¿qué ocurre? Este foco bacteriano está obligando al sistema básico a producir un control permanente y un encapsulamiento para mantenerlo controlado. Esto va debilitando energéticamente el sistema básico de Fischer. Los granulomas.
The chronic stresses or the chronic aggressions have to be looked at from the point of view, first of all, of the bacterial foci. Our office is full with chronic patients. It's not the patient that started having a little problem yesterday. Those patients that have gone through all the other specialists, they're chronic. And then I start talking to them, I open their mouth and I see the vitalized teeth, leftover roots, that have obliged the body to form granuloma. Because the formation of a dental granuloma is a defense activity of the body. The capsules, they're happening, and then the infection is dormant. And that patient with a leftover root, you make a blood test, and it is not even able to show any variation in the blood test because it is encapsulated. And that permanent existence, that chronicity produces a permanent and growing and advancing weakness of the whole structure.
¿Y qué fue interesante? Encontrar que estas regulaciones alteradas por foco, sobrecargas bacteriales demostrables, solamente encontrábamos en el 5.5% de los casos. Demostrables, o sea que uno puede decir que en el hemograma se demostraba y que había. Pero en cambio, el 98% de estos pacientes, allá tradicionalmente todo paciente se le hace su Panorex como rutina en el protocolo que ahora vamos a ver, 98% tenían procesos en boca, 75% en amígdalas, 38% en senos paranasales y apenas un 4% en el resto del organismo. O sea que los focos peores que encontramos definitivamente están en la boca, y en la universidad jamás nos dijeron que había que mirarle la boca al paciente.
And look at these numbers here. When you have these altered regulations, and we have gone through a very big number of patients doing this protocol, we have found bacterial happenings that you can demonstrate with a blood test, only 5.5%. But In the dental cavity, or the oral cavity, 98%. Tonsillar terrain, that is the tonsillar ring, 75%. Paranasal sinuses, 38%. And other organs, only 4%.
Quiero recalcar que aquí en este terreno odontológico alterado, en la radiografía, muchas veces encontrábamos bolsas paradontóxicas donde metía el odontólogo, el explorador, y eso se iba por allá adentro. Y no necesariamente tenían que estar botando materia. Pero en la medición del punto de maxilar y de dientes de Fold encontrábamos positivos para gran cantidad de bacterias, para osteitis, para granulomas, para toda la gama que es lo que nos hace dar este 98%. El hecho de que radiológicamente se encontraban alteraciones y a la medición corroborábamos específicamente bacterias o patologías.
And mind you, in this exaggerated number, because it is very high, you might find the following. You see the patient, you just press the gum and you see the pus flowing out. And you say, my God, this must show up in a blood test. And you make the blood test and it's normal. I mean, the body doesn't even have the strength anymore to produce a hemo change. But you go there and you test to a lymphatic measurement point with both, and you see a positive reading. And then you have your little alarm light. And then if you want to be more thorough, we do normally for every patient who comes in a Panorex X-ray to analyze the dental status. And that's why we go up to this percentage here, which is just amazing.
Excuse me. When you talk about the dental caries, what are you looking for? The cavities, the fillings, the root canals, the implants? What's...
And what are we looking for? Whatever is not
Man-made, it's a problem.
Es el menor problema.
I mean, from decay to a filling is in the 98%?
And if man has been there, it's a problem.
Just some of the metals will cause a problem.
Hay una cosa que hemos encontrado mucho. Al Panorex muchas veces está la radiografía aceptable. En hueso, en zonas sedéntulas de hueso, hemos encontrado una sombrita oscurita. A la medición es positiva para osteitis. La odontóloga abre y apenas mete la cuchara, es como que el hueso estuviera convertido en queso, queso que desayuna uno, una cosa, y se raspan verdaderas cavidades hasta de centímetro o medio centímetro.
It is not just a decay or whatever, and your dentists know more about it than we know. But you take a Panorex and it looks sort of normal. And let's say you have an edentulous part here, you might see a little cloudy conformation of the bone structure there. If you send them to the dentist and they open, they go into a cavity as if it was cottage cheese with sand. That's a residual osteitic problem. And here again, the saying of Hopfer acquires all its validity. Any part of the body that has undergone an inflammatory process, it might be this big inflammation or this big or building high, any part of the body will be left with an engram, and that engram is an inflammation, is a fetal disturbance.
Recordemos en la diapositiva primera que el mismo efecto, o sea, la misma respuesta produce ese poquito de milímetros de osteitis, pero que todos los días, las 24 horas del día y permanentemente está irritando, puede producir más daño que un trauma severo de una fractura o algo.
And remember, that little residual osteitic focus is there, permanently emitting disturbing information, interfering information. That might be even worse than an inflammatory process like this here because of a fracture, because you got run over by a truck, That small terrain, because it's constantly there, and it's sucking off energy every second of life.
Next, please. Yes.
I don't understand what those numbers mean. Could you explain again? Is this like the percentage of disturbance fields you find, or?
Que si le explican otra vez un momentito lo que son esos porcentajes, que si son el porcentaje de presencia de campos interferentes o de focos, o si me puede dar otra vez una referencia a la cifra.
La sobrecarga bacteriana demostrable, o sea, donde podríamos decir hay un foco botándome bacterias al sistema, solo el 5.5%.
The objective bacterial surcharge, where you can test it in your lab that will give it to you, sending bacteria into the system, I mean, just shuffling them onto the system, was able to be demonstrated in 5.5% of the cases when we were looking at problems of altered regulations.
Pero en los pacientes, previo a toma del Panorex, análisis del Panorex con el odontólogo, corroboración entre la clínica que la historia clínica presentó y los datos que encontramos en la boca, sumados a la medición de los puntos de control y de los puntos específicos de FOL para dientes, nos demostraron que el 98% de las personas tenían alguna clase de problema en terreno odontológico.
Looking at the mouth via a Panorex, physically, together with the dentist, and we have a dentist locally in the office, testing point 2A of the lymphatic vessel of valve and the individual valve measurement points, we found out that in 98% of the cases, something, small, medium, or large, was wrong with the dental structure, be it physically dentally or energetically dentally.
Es cierto porque en algunos casos no había patología orgánica, sino patología energética, caracterizada por presencia de bimetales, un oro arriba con una amalgama abajo, y eso era lo que podía estar creando el campo del disturbio.
And we say dentally or energetically, because you might find a beautiful mouth, no problems at all, the Panorex is beautiful, but you still have an energetic disruption. And you start asking yourself, why? Well, then you look again into that mouth and you see a silver amalgam on the top and you see gold at the bottom. You have a pathogalvanic condition. You have different electrical currents that are just ghosting around the mouth, and causing fields of disturbance, permanent irritations.
When you say you've got 98% on it, the treatment of these 98%, did they result in improvement in the altered regulation in these patients?
Que si el tratamiento de esta parte, simplemente no nos olvidemos de esto, de la parte odontológica, presenta una sustancial mejora en la alteración de la regulación.
En algunos pacientes sí, pero lo que no debemos olvidarnos es que los campos interferentes hacen gallada y se juntan, entonces una interferencia ontogénica sumada con una amígdala y con una cicatriz acá, es decir, necesitamos para curar al paciente ir desmontando los campos. De golpe hay uno que es el rey, pero los otros están allí.
Además, la duración que ha tenido esto ya formados en cristales. That's a very good question, by the way, because if you say, okay, if we have 98% of those guys who come into the office, and 98 of them have those problems, if we get rid of their dental problems, they should be all right. The problem is, as we said 2 or 3 slides before, it's not the type of aggression, because the basic system responds always the same. It might be an implant, it might be a root canal, it might be a fracture, it might be a bullet, it might be whatever. It's the duration, the intensity, and your beginning stage that counts. And there's something that's even worse to make things a little bit more dramatic. This damn fields of disturbance, they have an affinity like pickpockets and thieves always go to the same bars. They always meet at the same club. So when you have a pathologic problem that is field of disturbance condition, you might find out that an old bullet that you have in your butt and is acting as a field of disturbance has phone connection with a devitalized tool. So you have to dismount all of the fields of disturbances to be able to get to zero here. And there is something very important. If you dismount 50% of the field of disturbance, you will not get to 48% here. You do them all, or you don't do anything. Because in most instances, it is very difficult to get the capo de tutti de capi, the big chief, the godfather. You get the 4th lieutenant, the 5th lieutenant, the 2nd lieutenant, and we know in Colombia a lot about that, you know. They haven't been able to get the 1st and the 2nd and the 3rd. They're at the 4th so far, you know. And the business continues, you know. You have to get the heads, you know. And that's where your detective search really starts. Can we have just one of those charts, the circuits?
Para contestar un poquito más lo que él dice, nosotros necesitamos tener en cuenta, vamos a ver ahora, la carta de circuitos, porque los campos interferentes se asocian con los órganos de cada circuito de los 5 elementos de la estructura.
And this is very funny, and this, up to some extent, corroborates the wisdom of the Chinese, because if you look at the chart of the 5 elements, you know, and in any one of those elements, you've got thieves and pickpockets and murders and whatever. And they happen to establish a relationship because they're very much, they have their affinity. Bioenergetic circuits, the 5 elements. Yeah.
What specific criteria on a clinical basis are you using to diagnose altered manipulation in the beginning? When these patients come to you,
When talking about this first group here,
no. The patient walks in the door. Before you have a look in their mouth to see what may be going on, before you do a blood test to see whether or not there's a hemodynamic response to whatever the invasion is, what clinical criteria are you using to diagnose an altered regulation?
¿qué criterio clínico, antes de que se le haga medición, que se le haga sobre el paralelo, se toma como criterio para ubicarnos a esos pacientes dentro de un paciente que tiene las regulaciones alteradas?
Básicamente se haría a través de lo que diga la historia clínica y a lo largo de la historia clínica como él responde normalmente a las sobrecargas. Si yo le hago preguntas como si usted sufre cambios de temperatura, se resfría fácilmente, o si tiene que trabajar un día o mucho, al otro día se siente mal, etcétera. Es decir, cosas que me indiquen que su sistema no es capaz de soportar sobrecargas. Eso quiere decir que está crónicamente bloqueado.
We have not touched one single of the gadget in the office. We haven't sent the patient for the X-ray. We haven't done anything so far. We're sitting down with the patient and we're asking questions. We're just writing down his clinical history. That's the best tool. That's better than Dermatron, that's better than the X-ray, better than anything, if you know how to use all those tools that God gave us. Because if I ask this patient, okay, if you have an 8-day working day, if you have to work one day longer than 8 hours, you have to sit there for another 3 hours, are you worn out the next day? He said, yeah, well, I can take that, you know. Me, 8 hours and that's all. More than 8 hours, I'm dead. I know that he cannot take excesses. If I ask him, well, if you have a flu, does it drain you for 3 weeks, or are you out of the flu more or less in 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 days? Oh no, for me, flu, 45 days. I know that he's a weakling from his defense. So those are all criteria that you have to take into account before touching any gadget, before testing anything. And you have to note down, because those are very important role markers to know where you're going to place your patient in your table of homotoxicosis. If you're going to place him on the left side, or if you're going to place him with altered regulation system on the right side of the chart.
cualquier paciente que esté presentando clínicamente infecciones banales de cualquier índole y alguna manifestación alérgica tiene sobrecarga.
And I tell you out of experience, any patient who comes in with slight infections, everything, I mean, the little cut here turn into discomfort for several days. And any patient who tells me, well, I'm allergic to more than one thing, you know, you have altered regulations. Because allergies is allos ergain, it's a different response. And you only respond different when you are stuck. And you're stuck when your regulation systems are blocked. And they are blocked when you're on the right side of your homotoxicosis chart. And every day, more and more people are walking at great speed towards the right side of the chart.
Para redondear un poquito este concepto de la conjugación de focos, siempre en el consultorio usamos este cuadro y además se lo hacemos ver al paciente porque de golpe para el paciente es muy sorprendente encontrar su historia clínica en un cuadro que no ha sido hecho para él. Entonces de golpe me viene un paciente que está sufriendo de infecciones crónicas de riñón, pero al mismo tiempo es una persona que le hicieron un tratamiento de conductos en un incisivo, que ha sufrido de infecciones en el oído medio, que además tiene un flujo vaginal y que de vez en cuando hace rinitis. Entonces de golpe, esto a lo largo de la vida, o sea, no es que lo haga todo junto, es decir, son series de patologías que ha presentado a lo largo de la vida. Entonces yo vengo y le digo, mire señora, su problema está en el circuito del riñón. Entonces le hago ver cómo este problema se me está manifestando en que cuando a los 8 años se cayó y se quebró el diente y le hicieron el tratamiento de conductos, tiempo después empezó a sufrir de otitis. Y después de que empezó a sufrir de otitis, apenas empezó sus relaciones sexuales, empezó con flujos vaginales que exhaustó de golpe como una sinusitis. Entonces toda esta patología hace que hoy, 30 años después, este paciente tenga dañados sus riñones.
Okay. These charts, you cannot imagine how helpful they are in the waiting room. We have them in the waiting room, so while the patients have to sit there, some of them unfortunately have to sit for a couple of hours, you know. They can look at this here, they can look at the teeth, and then when they come in, we say, okay, why are you coming? Well, I have problems with my kidney. That's what my last doctor told me, that I had a kidney infection and so on and so on. And then you start looking at them and say, well, you are 17 or you're 18, aren't you? Yes. How about your wisdom teeth? Did they pull them? No, they haven't pulled them. And you look there and they are not there. And you press here in the back, it hurts. So they are impacted. So you have here wisdom teeth, okay? Then when she was 14 or 13 or less, 7 or 8 years old, she said, well, I had a lot of ear infection, running ears. And they gave me cortisone and antibiotic or whatsoever. And when I was 15 or 16, I had my first sexual encounters, and soon after, I started having a vaginal discharge. You know, and you have ear, you know, wisdom teeth, prostate, uterus, and the reason why I come here is because I want you to take care of my kidney problems, because I have to go to the ENT because I have a sinusitis, chronic sinusitis problem, and you have a frontal sinus problem here. So you say, I mean, what is wrong with you is your whole kidney circuit, the water.
Y muchas veces encontramos que a lo mejor la patología de este paciente no está en sus riñones, sino que está en su corazón, porque este circuito alterado por un diente, por un oído crónico, por un útero crónico, con una sinusitis crónica, me genera todo un disturbio en el circuito de riñón-vejiga que me va a afectar energéticamente el corazón, y a lo mejor viene esa señora con problemas de arritmias o de otra situación, que puede que con la droga el cardiólogo se la tenga controlado, pero solo cuando desconecte todos estos campos de interferencia y corrija este circuito, ella no necesitará más droga cardiovascular.
And this good lady might not have come to see you because of her kidneys. She comes in because of her heart, because she's fed up with her cardiologist, because she has been with him for 3 years. She's taking Lanicor or whatever heart medication, but she doesn't get better. Not the heart, maybe the heart is beating normally, but she feels lousy. And it might be very likely that all these disruptions that are being caused here by the kidney, UV meridian or circuit, they are shooting the disruptive energy towards the heart. And it is the heart that is screaming on behalf of this circuit. And she has been with the cardiologist for 4 years. Of course, her adrenals and her liver are just up to here with chemistry because she has been taking medicine which she doesn't need because her heart is normal. Only that the heart is suffering the effect of a sniper that is shooting every time it moves and they don't know where the sniper is. So that might be also the case in this very patient.
Esto, pues, como para tratar de demostrar es decir, cómo aquí la terapia neural se nos amarra y se nos mezcla dentro de su concepto de bloqueos a el concepto estructural de la acupuntura.
And it is amazing to see how this patient, when they start looking at that, and they see, incisions, uterus, they themselves start saying, Doc, listen, you have these little charts out there. Maybe I have this here. And here you can see, and the patient doesn't know that, you can see how your neurotherapy concept here cranks in together with the thousands of year-old Chinese element teaching, and how everything flows in together, as we said in the first day. You cannot just forget what you learned the last week, and now we're going to learn neurotherapy therapy and the rest of it is BS. No, it has to get together, be combined for the benefit of the patient.
Should take a break. What we'll do after the break is we'll finish showing the head thing, and then we'll do a demonstration on the head, okay?
Okay.
So we'll take 20 minutes now.
Vamos a dar una pausa. Acabamos con ese.
Just one other thing.
Farrell's Pharmacy, where you can get the Vala products, and you can get the information packet for physicians. Just give them a call. Mark McKibben is the guy's name, and he did all of our good part of the Vala translations. And then our, I'm going to put up here our fax number. We want to communicate with everybody, so you can just fax us information. I'll put it up here right now. Then we'll show the rest. We'll show the rest of the video, and then we'll start to get into some head neural therapy from the members here in the group. Okay.
And this afternoon we're going to be talking about the autonosal blood, the history and the way you can incorporate the blood as therapeutic element for your patients. And then Arturo is going to be talking on more topics of what we have been bringing so far.
Ok. Dentro de las sobrecargas crónicas, otra de las severas que tenemos, por favor, empecemos, si vamos a hacer buena medicina y vamos a hacer medicina biológica, empecemos a darle primordial importancia a la forma como nuestro paciente se va a seguir alimentando.
If we want to really do some good biological medicine, and we want to be accurate in that, we have to start, if we haven't done it so far, we have to start paying attention to the way our patient feeds himself.
Hay dos sobrecargas tremendamente problemáticas para el paciente, que es la disbacteriosis intestinal y la micosis intestinal, ya que ellas llevan a severas alteraciones en el sistema básico. ¿Esto qué nos va a dar? Hiponutrición, puesto que aunque se coma, no se está absorbiendo. Hepato y pancreopatías, que si el tiempo nos alcanza vamos a verlas mañana. Alergias de tipo exudativa y finalmente patologías, alteración inespecífica francamente alterada.
Two of the surcharges or of the excesses that are very common nowadays in the as chronic aggressions are the intestinal dysbacteriosis and the intestinal mycosis. Those two dysfunctions lead to a severe alteration or even mutations in further stages of the basic systems, translating themselves in hyponutrition, maybe a lot of trash, but nutritive part zero, hepatic and pancreatic disorders, and tomorrow, if we have the time, we will go into these two specific pathologies, pancreatitis, chronic pancreatitis and chronic hepatitis. Exudative allergies, and you know that the prior stage to the proliferation, which is the prior stage of tumor formation,